The Millionaire's Son and the Maid's Heart. Marcus Wellington III stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city sparkle below like scattered diamonds. At 45, he had built an empire worth over $200 million, but success had come at a price. His wife Catherine had passed away 3 years ago from cancer, leaving behind their 12-year-old son, David, and a void that no amount of money could fill. The pharmaceutical magnate had thrown himself into work, expanding Wellington Industries across 3 continents. But lately, he'd been thinking about David's future, and his own loneliness. The boy needed a mother figure, and Marcus, well, he was tired of eating dinner alone in a dining room that seated 20. Dad, David's voice broke through his contemplation. The boy stood in the doorway, still in his street Augustine prep uniform, backpack slung over one shoulder. At 12, David had his mother's gentle eyes and Marcus's determined jawline. "How was school, son?" "It was okay." David dropped his bag and joined his father at the window. "Mrs. Rodriguez helped me with my math homework again. She's really good at explaining fractions." Marcus smiled. Elena Rodriguez had been their housekeeper for 2 years, ever since old Mrs. Patterson retired. She was a single mother from the Bronx, working multiple jobs to support her 8-year-old daughter, Sophia. Unlike the parade of nannies and housekeepers they'd employed over the years, Elena treated David like family rather than a job assignment. "That's good of her," Marcus said absently, his mind already turning to the evening ahead. He had invited 5 women to dinner, all from prominent families, all suitable potential mothers for David and wives for himself. It was a practical arrangement, really. Love was a luxury he couldn't afford again. "Are you sure about this dinner party thing?" David asked, as if reading his thoughts. Marcus turned to study his son. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you really think you can just pick a mom? Like choosing a car or something?" The innocence of the question stung. "It's more complicated than that, David. These women understand our world. They know what it means to be part of the Wellington family." David shrugged. "I guess. It's just, Mom always said the best things in life can't be bought." Before Marcus could respond, Elena's voice drifted from the kitchen. "Sophia, Van Akka, help me with these dishes before we start dinner prep." 8-year-old Sophia Rodriguez appeared, her dark curls bouncing as she skipped toward the kitchen. She and David had become fast friends, often doing homework together while Elena worked. The little girl's laughter filled the penthouse in a way that reminded Marcus painfully of happier times. "Mr. Wellington," Elena appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. "The dinner for tonight, I have everything prepared. The lobster bisque, the Wellington beef, and the chocolate soufflé. Everything will be ready by 7. "Thank you, Elena. I don't know what we'd do without you." She smiled, that warm, genuine expression that seemed to light up the room. "It's my pleasure. David and I finished his science project earlier. He's very bright, Mr. Wellington. You should be proud." Marcus felt a flutter of something, pride, warmth, gratitude, that had nothing to do with business or money. "I am very proud." As Elena returned to the kitchen, David tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. When you pick, I mean, when you decide, can I have a say?" "She's going to be my mom too, right?" Marcus knelt to his son's level, seeing Catherine's eyes staring back at him. "Yes, David, this affects you more than anyone. What do you think I should look for?" David was quiet for a long moment. "Someone who makes you smile. Really smile, not just that business smile you do. And someone who cares about people, not just money and stuff." "That's very wise, son." "And Dad, someone who won't send Elena away. I know it's selfish, but she's like family now." Marcus felt a tightness in his chest. When had his son become so insightful? "We'll see, David, we'll see. At 7 sharp, Marcus's guests arrived. He had orchestrated the evening carefully, inviting 5 women who represented the pinnacle of New York society. Each was accomplished, beautiful, and from a family that would enhance the Wellington legacy. Victoria Ashworth arrived first, stunning in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. The oil heiress kissed the air beside Marcus's cheeks and swept into the living room as if she owned it. "Marcus, darling, this place needs a woman's touch. All this modern art, so cold. When we're married, I'll have my decorator gut the place." Behind her came Priscilla van der Berg, the pharmaceutical heiress whose family had been competitors until Marcus acquired their company last year. She nodded approvingly at the penthouse's opulence. Excellent taste, Marcus. Though I do think the kitchen is rather small. I'll need space for a proper staff when I entertain. The third arrival was Anastasia Cromwell, whose family owned half of Manhattan's real estate. She examined the apartment with calculating eyes, already mentally redecorating. The square footage is acceptable, though the master suite will need expanding. And we'll need to discuss David's schooling. He'll require more intensive preparation for his role as heir. Delphine Rothschild Banks came next, the art gallery owner whose family connections opened doors across Europe. She admired his art collection while critiquing the placement. These pieces would show better in my galleries, darling. We could make quite the power couple, your money, my cultural influence. Finally, Cordelia Blackstone arrived, the tech mogul's daughter who had just inherited a social media empire. She immediately began discussing merger opportunities and portfolio synergies. Marcus watched them interact with David during cocktails, noting how each woman spoke to his son like a small adult or, worse, an inconvenience to be managed. Victoria suggested boarding school in Switzerland. Priscilla recommended a nutritionist to optimize his development. Anastasia critiqued his posture and suggested deportment lessons. Meanwhile, Elena moved quietly through the room, serving canapés with professional grace. She was nearly invisible to his guests, just another piece of household machinery. But Marcus noticed how she caught David's eye and winked when he looked overwhelmed, how she quietly refilled water glasses without being asked, how she seemed to anticipate everyone's needs. "Daddy," Sophia whispered, tugging at Elena's apron as she passed through to the kitchen. "Can David come play tomorrow? We want to build that volcano for his science project." "See, mija, but quietly now. Mr. Wellington has important guests." Marcus overheard the exchange and felt another pang of something he couldn't quite name. When was the last time someone had cared about David's volcano project? Dinner progressed exactly as Marcus had planned. The conversation flowed from stock markets to charity galas to vacation homes in the Hamptons. Each woman showcased her accomplishments and connections while subtly positioning herself as the ideal Wellington wife. Victoria described her plans for remodeling the penthouse and David's education. "The boy needs structure, Marcus. Military school would do him wonders." Priscilla outlined how their combined pharmaceutical empires could dominate global markets. Of course, David would need to understand that business comes first. "Sentiment is a luxury we can't afford." Anastasia discussed expanding the Wellington real estate portfolio. "Children adapt quickly. David will learn to appreciate the finer things once he's properly guided." Delphine proposed joint art investments and cultural patronage. "We could shape the entire New York art scene. David could learn refinement and taste from the best tutors money can buy." Cordelia suggested leveraging social media influence for business growth. "Kids his age are all about digital platforms anyway. We could monetize his presence early." Through it all, David picked at his food, answering their questions politely but without enthusiasm. Marcus recognized his own childhood in his son's careful responses, the weight of expectations, the pressure to be perfect, the loneliness that money couldn't touch. As Elena served the chocolate soufflé, disaster struck. Sophia, who had been quietly coloring in the corner, accidentally knocked over her water glass, sending a cascade across the pristine white tablecloth and splashing onto Victoria's designer gown. "Dios mío," Elena rushed forward, mortified. "I'm so sorry, Sophia, what have you done?" Victoria shrieked, jumping up from her chair. "This dress costs more than you make in 6 months. It's ruined." "I'll pay for the cleaning," Elena said quickly, though Marcus could see the worry in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Miss Ashworth. Cleaning, this is couture. It can't be cleaned." Victoria's face was red with rage. "Marcus, this is exactly why children shouldn't be around during adult gatherings. This woman clearly can't control her brat." Sophia began to cry, and David jumped up from his chair. "She didn't mean it. It was just an accident." "David, sit down," Victoria snapped. "You need to learn there are consequences for lack of discipline." But instead of sitting, David went to Sophia and put his arm around the little girl's shoulders. "It's okay, Sophia. Accidents happen." Elena knelt beside her daughter, speaking softly in Spanish while cleaning up the spill with quiet efficiency. Marcus watched the scene unfold, seeing something that made his chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "Perhaps," Anastasia said coldly, "this is a sign that certain elements need to be removed from the household." "I quite agree," Priscilla added. "A proper wife needs to manage the staff appropriately." "The child is clearly disruptive," Delphine observed. Most inappropriate for an evening like this. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but before he could speak, Elena stood up with dignity and tact. Ladies, Mr. Wellington, I apologize for the disruption. Sophia and I will leave immediately. She began gathering her daughter and their things, but Sophia was still crying. David looked between the adults, his young face showing a maturity beyond his years. Wait, Marcus said quietly, and everyone turned to look at him. He was seeing the scene with new eyes, Victoria's cruel dismissal of a child's accident, his guest's immediate assumption that Elena and Sophia were disposable problems to be solved, David's instinctive kindness and protection of someone smaller than himself. Elena, please don't go. Victoria stared at him in disbelief. Marcus, surely you're not going to let this incident slide. Standards must be maintained. Marcus looked at his son, who was still comforting Sophia with the same gentle patience Catherine had shown him. He thought about David's earlier words about finding someone who truly cared about people, someone who made him really smile. You know what, Victoria? You're absolutely right. Standards must be maintained. He stood up, his voice carrying the authority that had built an empire. Elena Rodriguez has been part of our family for 2 years. She has shown my son more kindness and genuine care than he's received from anyone else since his mother died. She works 3 jobs to support her daughter, never complains, and treats everyone with respect and dignity. The room had gone completely silent. Sophia is a sweet, intelligent little girl who has brought laughter back into this house. And tonight, I watched 5 accomplished women dismiss a child's accident with cruelty and suggest throwing away people who have become family. Victoria's face had gone white. Marcus, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. He walked over to where Elena stood with Sophia, David still beside them. Elena, you're not going anywhere. This is your home too. He turned back to his guests, seeing them with crystal clarity for the first time. Ladies, I think this evening has been very educational. Thank you for coming, but I believe it's time for you to go. Marcus. Priscilla stood up, her voice sharp with disbelief. You're making a terrible mistake. You need someone from our world, someone who understands. I understand perfectly, Marcus interrupted. I understand that I've been so focused on finding someone who fits into my world that I forgot to look for someone who could help me build a better one. One by one, his guests gathered their things and left, each expressing varying degrees of outrage and disbelief. Victoria was the last to go, pausing at the door. You'll regret this, Marcus. That woman is nobody. She has nothing to offer you. After the door closed behind them, the penthouse seemed to breathe with relief. Sophia had stopped crying, and David was showing her how the chocolate soufflé was made in the kitchen. Elena stood uncertainly in the living room, still holding the damp towel she'd used to clean up the spill. Mr. Wellington, she began, I'm so sorry about tonight. I know those women were important to you. Elena. Marcus stepped closer, seeing her for the first time. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. She had an inner light, a warmth that had nothing to do with money or status. Can I ask you something? Of course. What do you think makes a good parent? She looked surprised by the question. Love, she said without hesitation. Patience. Being willing to put someone else's needs before your own. Teaching them to be kind, to work hard, to treat everyone with respect no matter who they are. And a good partner. Elena's cheeks flushed slightly. Someone who sees you for who you really are, not what you have. Someone who makes you want to be better than you were yesterday. Someone who stands beside you when things get difficult. Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, like a door opening after being locked for years. Elena, those women tonight, they saw dollar signs when they looked at me. They saw a project to be managed when they looked at David. But you, what do you see? She met his eyes, her own shining with unshed tears. I see a man who loves his son more than anything in the world but has forgotten how to show it. I see someone who's been hurt and is afraid to trust again. I see David's father, who deserves to be happy. From the kitchen came the sound of children's laughter, David teaching Sophia how to properly fold whipped cream, both of them covered in chocolate. Mom, look, Sophia called out in English, her accent making the words musical. David is teaching me to be a chef. That's wonderful, Mija. Marcus watched Elena's face as she looked at their children, because that's what they were, he realized. Their children. David had been happier in the past 2 years than he'd been since Catherine's death, and it wasn't because of expensive tutors or exclusive schools. It was because Elena treated him like her own son, with unconditional love and genuine interest in his thoughts and dreams. "Elena," Marcus said softly, "would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Just us. I feel like I have a lot to learn about what really matters." She smiled, and Marcus felt his heart skip in a way it hadn't in years. "I'd like that very much. And Elena, thank you. For what? For reminding me that the best things in life really can't be bought." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same spot by the windows, but everything had changed. The penthouse was still elegant, but now it felt like a home. Sophia's artwork decorated the refrigerator alongside David's honor roll certificates. Family photos had replaced some of the expensive art pieces, pictures of picnics in Central Park, David teaching Sophia to ride a bike, Marcus and Elena laughing over a game of Monopoly. Elena had moved in gradually, bringing warmth and life to spaces that had been cold and formal. She hadn't wanted to change everything at once, respecting Catherine's memory while slowly making the place their own. Marcus had discovered that having someone who truly loved you meant they saw your past as part of your story, not something to be erased or replaced. David had flourished under Elena's influence. He was still the same intelligent, thoughtful boy, but now he smiled more, laughed freely, and had learned to express his emotions instead of hiding them. Elena had taught him Spanish, and he loved surprising Sophia by reading her bedtime stories in both languages. Sophia had blossomed too, feeling secure and loved in a way she'd never experienced. Marcus had legally adopted her 3 months ago, and she now proudly called herself Sophia Wellington Rodriguez. She was David's little sister in every way that mattered, and the bond between the children was unbreakable. The business world had initially been shocked by Marcus's choice. Some of his associates had whispered about him marrying down, but their criticism faded when they saw how happy and centered he'd become. His decision-making was sharper, his leadership more compassionate, and Wellington Industries had had its most profitable year yet under his renewed focus and energy. More importantly, Marcus had learned to delegate and prioritize, spending real time with his family instead of just providing for them financially. He coached David's Little League team, attended Sophia's school plays, and had dinner with his family every night unless absolutely unavoidable business travel prevented it. Elena had insisted on continuing her work, but now she ran her own catering business from their expanded kitchen. She employed several of her friends from the neighborhood and had built a reputation for bringing authentic warmth to high-end events. Marcus was her biggest supporter and proudest client. The penthouse's dining room, which had once seated 20 in cold formality, had been reconfigured to feel intimate and welcoming. Elena had convinced Marcus to donate most of Catherine's formal china to charity, keeping only a few special pieces while adding colorful, comfortable dishes that encouraged family meals and conversation. Tonight was special. They were celebrating David's 13th birthday and the first anniversary of Marcus and Elena's wedding. The ceremony had been small and perfect, held in the penthouse's living room with only close friends and family. David had walked Elena down the aisle, and Sophia had been the flower girl, both children beaming with joy at the official joining of their families. "Dad," David called out, interrupting Marcus's reflection. "Sophia needs help with her surprise for dinner." Marcus smiled, heading toward the kitchen where Elena was teaching Sophia to make flan, David's favorite dessert. The kitchen was filled with the sounds of family, laughter, gentle teasing, Elena singing softly in Spanish while she cooked. "Papi Marcus," Sophia called out, using the name she'd chosen for him. "Look what I made." She held up a slightly lopsided flan, her face glowing with pride. "It's perfect, princess," Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. "David's going to love it." Elena looked up from the stove, her face flushed from cooking, wearing one of her colorful aprons over a simple dress. She was more beautiful to Marcus now than any woman had ever been, because her beauty came from within, from the love she gave so freely, from the way she made everyone around her feel valued and cherished. "How was your day?" she asked, standing on her toes to kiss him hello. "Better now," Marcus replied, meaning it completely. "The Jameson contract came through, but more importantly, I left the office at 5:30 sharp." "Good," Elena said firmly. "Family time is sacred time." David appeared at Marcus's elbow. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always. Do you ever miss, the way things were before? When it was just business dinners and stuff?" Marcus considered the question seriously, looking around at his chaotic, love-filled kitchen. Sophia was carefully decorating her flan with strawberries, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Elena was humming while she stirred something that smelled incredible. Family photos covered the refrigerator, homework was scattered across the breakfast bar, and there were finger smudges on the stainless steel appliances. 2 years ago, this mess would have driven him crazy. Now it was the most beautiful sight in the world. Never, Marcus said firmly. Not for a single second. David grinned. Good, because I have something to tell you. He took a deep breath. Elena's been helping me with this project for school about family trees. And I realized something. What's that, son? She didn't just marry you. She chose us. All of us. Even when those rich ladies were mean to Sophia, Elena stayed calm and kind. And she's been taking care of me like I was her own kid since way before you guys got married. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. Yes, she has. And Dad, I'm glad you didn't pick one of those other women. They didn't really see us. Elena sees us. She does indeed. Elena overheard and came over to hug both of them, Sophia joining the group hug from below. For a moment, they stood there in their kitchen, holding each other tight, a family that had been built not on money or status, but on love, kindness, and the courage to choose what really mattered. You know what, Marcus said, looking at each of their faces. I think I'm the richest man in New York after all. Elena laughed, that musical sound that had become the soundtrack to his happiness. And I think we're all exactly where we're supposed to be. Later that evening, after David's birthday dinner and Sophia's slightly crooked but delicious flan, Marcus found himself back at the windows overlooking the city. But this time, he wasn't alone. Elena stood beside him, her hand in his, both of them watching David teach Sophia card tricks on the living room floor. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Sophia hadn't spilled that water? Elena asked softly. Marcus thought about it seriously. I think I would have eventually realized that none of those women could give me what I really needed. But it might have taken me much longer, and David might have suffered for it. Sophia felt terrible about that night for weeks. She shouldn't have. That spilled glass was the best thing that ever happened to me. It showed me who people really were when they thought nobody important was watching. Elena squeezed his hand. You know, when I took the job here, I thought I was just trying to provide for Sophia. I never imagined, that I'd find a home. A real family. That I'd fall in love with a man who could see past money and status to what really matters. Marcus turned to face her fully. Elena, I need you to know something. You didn't just save me from making a terrible mistake that night. You saved me, period. You and Sophia brought life back to this house, brought joy back to David, brought my heart back to me. Tears sparkled in her eyes. And you gave us security, yes, but more than that, you gave us belonging. You made us Wellingtons. You were always Wellingtons, Marcus corrected gently. From the moment you chose to comfort a lonely boy over impressing his wealthy father. From the moment you taught him fractions with patience instead of criticism. From the moment you showed him that family isn't about blood or money, it's about choosing to love each other every single day. From across the room, Sophia's delighted squeal interrupted them as she successfully performed David's card trick. The 13-year-old boy was clapping and cheering for his little sister with genuine enthusiasm, the same way Elena had always celebrated his achievements. Mommy Elena, Poppy Marcus, look what I did. They rushed over to admire Sophia's magic skills, and soon they were all sitting on the floor learning card tricks. Marcus couldn't help but think about those 5 women from that dinner party 2 years ago. They were probably at similar gatherings right now, networking and positioning themselves for advantageous marriages, still believing that wealth and status were the keys to happiness. They would never understand what Marcus had learned, that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or real estate or stock portfolios. It was measured in moments like this, in laughter that filled every corner of your home, in children who ran to you when they accomplished something wonderful, in a partner who loved you not for what you could provide but for who you were becoming. Victoria Ashworth had been right about one thing that night. Elena Rodriguez had been nobody in the eyes of New York society. She'd been a single mother working multiple jobs, living paycheck to paycheck, with no family connections or trust fund or social standing. But she'd been somebody to David when he needed help with homework. She'd been somebody to Sophia when bedtime stories needed to be read in both English and Spanish. She'd been somebody to Marcus when he needed to remember how to be human instead of just successful. She'd been somebody because she chose kindness over status, love over luxury, family over fortune. And in choosing her, Marcus had finally understood what Catherine meant when she said the best things in life couldn't be bought. The best things in life had to be chosen, nurtured, and protected. They had to be built day by day through small acts of love and large acts of courage. They couldn't be purchased or networked or inherited, they could only be given freely and received with gratitude. As Marcus tucked Sophia into her bed that night, she'd insisted on keeping her own room but loved having bedtime stories with both parents. She looked up at him with sleepy eyes and said, "Papi Marcus, are you happy you picked Mommy Elena?" Marcus smoothed her dark curls, so like her mother's. "Sophia, sweetheart, I didn't pick your mama. She picked us. She chose to love us when we needed it most, and that made all the difference. I'm glad she picked us too," Sophia said with a yawn. "We're a good family. The best," Marcus agreed, kissing her forehead. In the hallway, he met Elena coming out of David's room. "Asleep, finally. He's so excited about starting high school next month. And he wants to learn Portuguese so he can talk to my cousin Maria when she visits." Marcus shook his head in amazement. David's curiosity about the world had expanded exponentially since Elena joined their family. He was learning languages, trying new foods, making friends from different backgrounds, and developing an empathy that would serve him well as the future head of Wellington Industries, whenever he was ready for that responsibility, which Marcus no longer felt the need to rush. "Marcus," Elena said as they walked toward their bedroom, "do you ever worry that we're too different? That someday the differences in our backgrounds might..." Marcus stopped in the hallway and took her hands. "Elena, do you know what I've learned in the past 2 years?" "What?" "Money can buy you a house, but not a home. It can buy you a bed, but not peaceful sleep. It can buy you food, but not family meals filled with laughter. It can buy you companionship, but not the kind of love that makes you want to be better than you were yesterday." He pulled her closer. "You gave me all the things money couldn't buy. And in return, all I could give you was money, which turns out to be the least important thing I had to offer." Elena smiled, reaching up to touch his face. "That's not true. You gave me security, yes, but you also gave me respect. You saw me as an equal partner, not a charity case. You made me feel valuable for who I am, not grateful for what you provided. You gave Sophia a father who loves her unconditionally, and you gave me a husband who sees my dreams as just as important as his own." They stood in the hallway of their home, not the cold penthouse Marcus had once lived in, but the warm, lived-in, love-filled home they'd built together, and Marcus marveled at the journey that had brought them here. A millionaire had indeed asked his son to help choose a new mother. But in the end, it wasn't Marcus or David who did the choosing. It was Elena who chose them, with her kindness, her patience, her unwavering belief that people mattered more than possessions. And in choosing them, she'd given them the greatest gift of all, a family built not on obligation or advantage, but on love, respect, and the daily choice to care for each other's hearts as carefully as their own. The penthouse might still overlook the glittering city below, but Marcus no longer needed to look outside for happiness. Everything he'd ever wanted was right here, in the laughter echoing from children's bedrooms, in the warm hand holding his, in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring more moments of ordinary magic with the extraordinary woman who had chosen to love them. In choosing the poor maid over the 5 rich women, Marcus hadn't sacrificed anything. He'd gained everything that truly mattered. And as Elena often reminded him with a knowing smile, the best things in life still couldn't be bought, they could only be earned, day by day, through the simple, powerful choice to love and be loved in return. The end. Word count. 8,127.